So very, very excited. Today, I guess everyone already know about this project, Solana. We have Lily Liu, president of Solana Foundation, with us. So Lily, do you want to let us know how you got into crypto space as a whole? You have a very impressive background. If you could touch on that a bit, and how you got into crypto and how you got involved in Solana.
Sure. So let's see. I started my career in more traditional venues. So my first job was at Morgan Stanley in Hong Kong. And then I worked at McKinsey in New York and in Beijing. I worked in KKR in New York and also the European portfolio. And then after that, I was building hospitals in China. So that was my first startup, obviously not a tech startup, pretty different. And when I was living in Shanghai in 2013, friends with fellow Bobby Lee, who people have been crypto for a little bit, might recognize the name. He was one of the founders of BTCC, which is formerly known as BTC China, and he's also Charlie Lee of Litecoin's older brother. So he was a friend of mine in Shanghai, and we used to hang out, and then suddenly started talking about Bitcoin. And I think probably many people have had this experience where you'll meet someone who talks about crypto and they just won't stop talking about it, right? And then you go from a little bit curious to annoyed back to, okay, fine, I will look into it and see what's going on here. So that took me probably a couple of months to be like, oh my gosh, like, please, just, I can't hear about this anymore. So I looked into it and I thought it's probably a scam. And I thought it's either a really big scam or this is like truly revolutionary, totally interesting, right? There's not going to be anything in between. And at the time, there'd been a big pump in the price and various other things and, big drama, because that's what happens in crypto. And so I read the white paper and I was like, okay, there's something very serious going on here. And at the time I was living in China. And I just thought it was so interesting, this idea that you would have an economic system that's governed by its participants, because it's just such a different way of organizing communities, right? And it's just so radically different from the ways that we think about economic models and also governance models. And it's not just about digital gold or stateless money, although that's kind of the beginning of it. There are so many things that are the consequence of stateless money, of decentralized networks, of self-custody, of self-governing systems, and all of these kind of things that maybe were just in some corner of the internet before, but now they're front and center.
Cool.
So that's how I got started, and then I moved back to the U.S. I met this guy, Balaji Srinivasan, who is probably, name many people recognize. We inherited this very broken company, which was doing Bitcoin mining, did really well before it became very distressed. And that was my first bear market. So I guess for me, this is my third bear market. I've been through a few. They're always very dramatic and very soul-wrenching. And then we turned that company somewhat unexpectedly into earn.com. And sold that to Coinbase in 2018. And then from there, I was a little bit of a Bitcoin maxi actually for a couple of years. I remember debating that coin with Anatoly in 2019. I think I probably lost that discussion.
Fortunately.
But to me, it's not really, I don't take like a very gladiatorial view of, L1 wars, or like, to me, that's a lot of sort of media sensationalism that's good for making headlines. But in reality, I think that, Bitcoin will coexist with all of these other networks. All of these networks will probably coexist with one another. It's not necessarily a choice, only if one of them can survive, right? I think that Bitcoin, to me, is the one that started it all. So at the very least, Bitcoin deserves respect, and it's just filial piety in a certain way of thinking. So, anyways, I started using. So I was aware of Solana from close to the beginning, and then I started to use Solana in the beginning of 2021. because I was just kind of curious, like what people were up to, how are people's various projects going, and I was completely floored. I had another one of those. I became kind of like Bobby Lee talking to me about Bitcoin in 2013 type of style. I mean, I was using Radium the DEX, and I was just completely floored because I'd click a button and something would happen. And that something that would happen was not like going to your blockchain explorer and clicking refresh for somewhere between minutes and an hour, And these are like complex things interacting with the DEX on chain, and it just kind of felt like a Web2 experience to me. And I'd been missing that for so long, right? I'd been in crypto for like 7 years, and I was just so used to clicking a button, paying a lot to click that button, and then waiting for a really long time for that thing to happen, right? So I was like, totally like, this is amazing. And I did the same thing as Bobby did to me, talked to all these people that probably didn't care like how performant this AMM was. It really didn't care, but that was how I got interested in it. And then the more and more that I started to sort of get updated on what Solana was up to, I was just really impressed, because I think that in crypto, there's people that are doing real technical innovation, but if I may, sometimes like the failure mode there is that people are sort of like forest versus trees, overly sort of focused on technical purity. And then there is obviously that side of crypto, which is commercial to a fault, let's say, right? And there aren't that many projects that are truly innovative and are also really sort of practical, and really sort of understand what their North Star is, which is that how do we get 1 billion people to use self-custody? Obviously, ideally on Solana, right? But really sort of having that long-term vision, also having technology to be able to support that, and being able to sort of define and execute against that strategy. And then ultimately, to me, it was just like a lot of really good people, really nice people that I'd want to hang out with. And I was like, it's great.
Yeah, you have an amazing, I think, a very, very impressive background. So a great addition to Solana. I guess Solana is also very fortunate to have such a strong team member advocating for the Solana ecosystem. But yeah, I think let's jump right now. So before we jump into the questions, I'll lay some the structure of today's AMA. And as you guys already can see down in the ticker, users who submit quality questions that have been chosen or contribute to the discussion will have the chance. So if your question has been chosen, you'll be getting $25 worth of Solana within 30 days after the AMA ends. And be sure to when you submit the questions, be sure to include your UID at the end of the question, or at the start of the question in the comment. So we'll go through some of the. So we've actually already sent out a Twitter on Binance Twitter. Collecting questions. We've gotten, I think, almost 4,000 questions from the community, which is amazing. But so we'll go through some of those, and congrats for those for the questions that have been chosen through the survey. You will also be receiving $15 Solana reward, and then we'll also go through some of the live questions you guys have in the live comments. But and then at the end, we do have another prize quiz session. So this time we will be trying out a new format. So for the prize quiz, I'll provide a QR code, and so you guys can scan the QR code or screenshot the QR code so that you can finish the AMA. And then after the AMA, you'll have a time frame to complete the quiz. You have to get 100% correct to be eligible to split the Solana prize pool. But yeah, with no further ado, let's jump into the first question. So this was submitted by one of the Twitter users. Coach Han asks, so I think a really good question to start the AMA. Where does the Solana name actually come from?
Yeah, so Solana Beach is an actual beach in the San Diego area. And so Anatoly, the founder, or one of the founders of Solana, he's a pretty avid surfer. He used to live in San Diego, and would go surfing a lot at Solana Beach.
So yeah,
Pretty simple.
very simple answer. But yeah, so Anatoly, Solana, one of the co-founders. Do you want to give some background on
Yeah.
I think Anatoly and the Solana project as a whole?
Yeah. So Solana was founded in 2017, and there are 5 co-founders. Anatoly, I asked him once, where did you come up with the idea of Solana? And it was, I guess, in 2017, a lot of people were paying attention to blockchain. And he was still working at Qualcomm, and he basically had a beer and a coffee and started to think about it, right? Like how to make a really performant blockchain where that would kind of like match the speed and performance that we all kind of come to expect on the internet. And because he was an engineer at Qualcomm, he actually did have some experience in building high performance, decentralized, hardware oriented networks, right? So, in a way, when we talk on mobile phones, right, they're very performant, decentralized networks, potentially all the way across the world, and it just works. And so I think he took inspiration from a lot of that and thought up this pretty unique architecture and completely rethought how you would architect a blockchain in order to make it performant, use like a leader-based system. And I think the original pitch was blockchain at NASDAQ speed. And so, blockchain that performs the way we expect stuff on the internet to perform. And so, finding different ways to innovate on blockchain architecture so that we don't have to necessarily accept, the trilemma that we talked about for years, which is that if it's secure, then it's also, if it's secure and affordable, it's also got to be slow, right? And so just finding a more optimal sort of point in that whole sort of trilemma that we've all been talking about for a while. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely be diving into a lot of. So you mentioned that Solana sort of solving the blockchain trilemma where there's a security side, the scalability, and then the cost, and then so we'll be diving in a lot into the technicals today with a lot of the great questions that have already been provided. So the next question, I think, which would address one of could be a good follow-up question is, what's the main distinguishing factor, or what's the main thing that distinguishes this Solana from other layer 1 blockchains?
Yeah. So for to users, the most important thing is its performance, right? And so what that means is it's really fast and really cheap. And so transactions will be confirmed in less than a second, sometimes oftentimes a fraction of a second. And they cost a fraction of a cent as well. And so, I remember when we had Bitcoin congestion, and so at one point I paid $50 for a transaction and waited up to an hour for finality. And then with Ethereum and then proof of stake and various other innovations, other blockchains have brought that down pretty substantially. But even on ETH mainnet today, a transaction, basically one click, if you will, costs a couple of dollars. And depending on how long you want to wait till finality, potentially a couple of minutes, right? And so that's already, quite a bit better, but it's still not good enough if you want to be building applications that, first of all, if you want to do like the simplest type of high transaction type of application, which is simply payments, right? So if I were going to pay you, Larry, if I just want to pay you $10, I'm certainly not going to spend $2 on a transaction fee for that, right? And if I'm going to do that in, I guess, some of the original smart contract, language-based sort of now broader set of networks, then I've probably got to be on either a side chain, or I've got to be on an L2. But then you inherently already get into some of like the trilemmas, the trade-offs there, right? Because you're not sort of on the main chain, and so you give up some of the future composability because you've already had to, at lower sort of transaction volumes, had to sort of offload transaction onto other networks. And so that's, there's a lot that goes on under the hood. So on one hand, it's like, it really is kind of as simple as I click and I don't notice the time or money it costs for me to actually, settle that transaction. And so, to date, Solana has done 135 billion transactions across the network on mainnet. It's like an astronomical number, right? And what that means is if you can like process all those transactions, because the thing is like in blockchain, when you want to do something like post to social, right? All those times you click a button on even your email or whatever, if you want to fully use a decentralized backend, all of those things are transactions, right? And so it's not just me sending you money. It's not just a financial transaction, right? It's like anytime you want to transmit data to potentially settle on chain. And so, quite simply, the more you can handle of that in a certain amount of time at an affordable cost, then the more applications that you can build that look a little bit, how we are now accustomed to using the internet. So to me, it kind of reminded me of, I remember like when I started using the internet, maybe this dates me, but the 56K dial-up modem days. And then over time, we got Ethernet. And the thing is, like, it really matters in terms of the applications you can build, because when you're on 56K streaming, when you're on 56K dial-up with no streaming, a company like Netflix, they're still in the entertainment industry, but they're literally mailing you DVDs, right? That's their business model. And when you have a highly performant network, then the application that uses that network is actually a fundamentally different application in business. So then Netflix is now a streaming company, not a DVD mailing company. And so to me, like, that is where a lot of the sort of things that seem like technical nuances and technical things that like people talk about on, in very heated debates all over crypto Twitter, actually really matter a lot, because then they cascade into experiences that people might actually want to use.
Yeah, so you mentioned an astronomical number. Solana up to date has 135 billion transactions, and with the TPS of around. So if you go onto the Solana.com website, I also was curious. Then you have a real-time dashboard of the transactions ticking, and I find that very, very interesting.
Yep.
So 135 billion. So if you calculate that over the years, that would be average around 3 to 4,000 transactions per second. So so I think go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, one other thing that I think is maybe worth pointing out is it's actually a very decentralized network as well. I think there for some reason has been this meme that Solana is super centralized or something. I think that's like very leftover information from maybe when Mainnet launched in 2020, and I'm not even sure if it was true then. But if you just look at the validator set, and you can just go to solanabeach.io and look through, the entire validator set and see all of the details. There are currently over 2,000 nodes that are actively validating on the network. At times, that's been over 3,000. And those nodes are definitely not like, a whole bunch of servers sitting in the same rack in AWS or anything like that, right? Like these are, there's no data center provider that has more than 20% of the network. We've actively sort of decentralized the network according to ASN and geography and hardware and service provider, really thought very deeply about decentralization on multiple dimensions. And then also, if you look at the so-called Nakamoto coefficient, which is the number of validators you would have to corrupt in order to sort of maliciously affect the network, right now it's 30. And if you compare that to other proof-of-stake networks, I think that might actually be the highest Nakamoto coefficient of any sort of scale proof-of-stake network. So that's something we're really proud of. When I first got involved in Solana about a year and a half ago, the number of nodes we had was somewhere between 200 and 300. And so that's grown substantially. And then also the Nakamoto coefficient when I first got involved was under 20. So, we've worked a lot on, making sure that because, at the end of the day, blockchain it's the physical network. It still resides on physical computers around the world. And so we've thought a lot about making sure that that's also healthy, robust, and decentralized.
Awesome. I think the biggest takeaway here is the main thing that distinguishes Solana blockchain. We can focus on the metrics for 3 to 4,000 TPS, Nakamoto coefficient, which represents decentralization, and where the number is higher is better because you would need to corrupt more validators to take over the network in a sense. So Solana is one of the highest at 31-ish. So I think that itself speaks numbers. than the numbers that it already represents. But let's move on to the next question. So I think with all of this, technical advantages, Nafisa asks, what are the problems that Solana are trying to solve or are currently solving?
Yeah. We always talk about how do you get 1 billion people to have self-custody. And so that I think that is something we really care about. I actually think that's probably, the one thing that all L1s and Web3 natives really care about. It's really, that unifies everyone, a belief in self-custody. And so if that's the case, then how do you have to make it attractive, possible, feasible, exciting, and fun for 1 billion people. That's mass adoption, right? To make it worthwhile to learn self-custody and to take it seriously, because it's quite different and can be a little bit of work even, right? And so in order to get there, part of it is you have a network that can actually deliver an experience which is similar to what you would expect today. And so that's things like having a mobile compatible experience. Because I think right now a lot of crypto is mostly consumed on the web and potentially through like a browser extension is usually, I think, probably the most popular way that people use wallets. There are some mobile apps that are really dominant. For example, Binance's mobile app is really excellent. But still, it's predominantly a web experience, and that is honestly basically the year 2000, right? Almost literally. So how do we sort of build the infrastructure, starting with Solana's blockchain itself, to permit, facilitate applications that people actually want to use? And so to me, in the crypto community, we've talked a lot about scaling. For a long time, scaling was basically associated with TPS, and that's obviously part of it. But it's a little bit more than that as well. And so, how do you provide infrastructure to support applications that can harness all the advantages that Web3 brings, right? Which are things like community incentives, permissionless development, community-led growth, community-led sort of creation of ideas and creation of projects, right? And community-led engagement, and then also really being able to sort of immediately work with a borderless audience like here, right? To build, consume, and improve upon applications that people actually want to use, and also explore. It's my belief that when technologies really sort of are transformational, it's because they are able to help you sort of basically make markets out of long tail markets, right? So this was a little bit like, so Uber, for example, there's always been an unmonetized long tail of people who could drive and people who needed a ride in any instant. And then you had this new technology and this platform encapsulated in a mobile phone that can instantaneously match that latent market, right? And I think that that's also happening in so many different ways through crypto, because there's the social side of it, there's the gaming side of it, there's the fact that people can now more sort of financialize their time in more micro ways. And so there's so many different ways that we're exploring that right now. But fundamentally, what you need user-friendly, accessible self-custody built on infrastructure that just kind of works. And where you don't have to sweat every time you click a button, because either it's too expensive or you're going to sit there and stare at a screen to make sure that your money got across. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you gave a great example, especially when the crypto prices are higher, or especially Ether prices are higher. Really, there's really no purpose in making payments or transactions, which is really the foundation of how crypto started, right? If the transaction fees are so high. So I think the main takeaways for this question is, well, at least for me, Solana is providing an infrastructure where developers or people can come onto and onboard to Web3, onboard to crypto, and provide that infrastructure where people can build experiences that we are used to in Web2 or in our day-to-day lives. And through the method would be providing a scalable, efficient, and affordable infrastructure, and which we mentioned some of the metrics also in the last questions. All right, great question, and congrats. So the next question is from Nika Tihoka 51. So would you be able to list 1 to 3 killer features of this of Solana that makes it ahead of its competitors?
Yeah, sure. So in my mind, the most important thing for any general purpose L1 is having an organic developer community. Because as an L1, actually your direct your direct customer, if you will, is a developer, right? Because no developers means there's no applications, which means there's nothing for anyone to do. Like there's nothing for users to do, right? And then it's just really cool open source technology, but it's not, out there applied and living in the real world. So the most important thing has always been developer community. And I think that, that's really the thing that we're the most proud of all of the L1s out there. There's the EVM developer community, and then the next largest one is Solana. So I think that really speaks for itself. And the other thing that I think is really important to add on to that is, if you're going to be a general purpose L1, which is absolutely Solana's vision, right? And that's why Solana's been emphasizing composability, and has been emphasizing sort of main chain single shard throughput to the maximum possible, is because if you're going to be a general purpose L1, you've got to have multiple application verticals that all have depth in your community. Otherwise, you're like a DeFi chain, and otherwise you're just like a NFT chain, or just a gaming chain or something like that. And I think there is a place for that in kind of the broader crypto world, right? Application specific architecture and things like that. That's a whole other discussion. But if you want to be a general purpose L1 and offer people the benefits of abstracting away managing your validator set, and offering people the advantage of having composability with other applications, right? Which a lot of applications might choose, because if you're even an NFT project, let's say you're a game, right? If you're like sort of just next door, so to speak, to DeFi on-chain DeFi protocols, then it's really seamless for you to necessarily, let's say, sort of mint an in-game item and have the option of getting liquidity for it instantly, right? And that integration is a lot more seamless than if potentially, the gaming chain is over here and then the DeFi chain is over here, and just more hops, and it's a very different set of trade-offs to try to sort of create that, and we call that composability, right? And so there's just some really big advantages. And so when you put those things together, where what makes or breaks an L1 is having an organic developer community, and then also having depth across, and also like the breadth of a developer community across different verticals. So I think that's really special about Solana. So that's where we've been focusing a lot of time and energy to really help foster and build a community, and also just really serve the community, because I actually think most of the best ideas don't necessarily come from people who have a Solana.com or Solana.org. It's really sort of from the groundswell of kind of like the hive mind or the intelligence of the community. I also, there is continued technical innovation. What we're really excited about is some of like the network upgrades that happened and are also in the works over the last kind of 6 to 12 months and going forward. So I think one that is definitely worth pointing out is Fire Dancer. Solana is now only the third chain that has a second client. So we are in the works, working on the jump to develop a second client. In a test environment, they were showing 1 million TPS, which is pretty amazing, right? So we're at 3,000 today, and even though it's going to come down in a production environment, yes, sure, all that type of stuff. But you can imagine, the whole theory was scale on sort of like the edge of hardware innovation. And so right now, like even with existing sort of hardware capabilities and specs that we kind of have out there, there's still quite a bit of room we can make in terms of like sort of main chain scalability. And then, over time that has the potential to get even better just as hardware naturally gets better. So let's see, that's a couple. Number one is always independent developer community, organic independent developer community. I think that becomes self-fulfilling because then people want to build multiple types of applications that at the end of the day are going to work together and make each other better. And then the third is, what is the lifeblood of any blockchain is its sort of the core network, and we're continuing to work on that as well. So.
Yeah, great answer. So, first off, like you mentioned, the developer community, which I think is a miracle in it of itself, where a lot of the projects coming out of 2015, 2017, they're EVM communities, right? They're based off of the Ethereum virtual machine. For those that don't know, but you can Google it to get yourself educated. Is a very important concept. But essentially, like EVM compatible projects, these developers, they just need to learn the EVM languages, right? Solidity, and then they'll be able to easily migrate to each project. So building a new community, a chain based off of a new programming language, I think it's amazing where Solana can build this community based off of your ecosystem. And then the second thing is you mentioned the TPS of an upcoming upgrade where Jump is developing an independent validator set that can achieve 1 million TPS. So right now Solana is around 3,000-4,000, but I think let's provide some context on how much TPS is, what other chains are doing, right? So for example, Bitcoin, I think around 7, Ethereum around 15. And even Web2 companies, I think Visa, but I think I see a lot of different metrics going around. But I think even like Visa is around 20 something, 30 something thousand TPS, right? So for a blockchain layer 1 or general purpose layer 1 to be able to achieve 1 million would be a very, very big feat, and I think would be able to with this. But of course, like Visa is mainly used for payment, whereas Solana, there's smart contracts going on. There's a lot of different infrastructures going on, and when more DeFi projects come on, there's definitely going to be more pressure on the resources needed. But yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I think it's a little bit of a lag. I think on like the network kind of upgrade point. There's some other, like, we call them network upgrades, but they're pretty big feature releases, right? These are not like bug fixes at all, right? But I think it's worth addressing. There were some chain halts last year because of like the incredible amount of interest that resulted in some spam that would hit the network. And so there were like some pretty big network upgrades that got rolled out last year. And the one most recently is pretty cool. It's local fee markets, where basically there would be premium pricing around folks trying to alter a certain account, meaning interact with, let's say, a specific program or something like that, or a specific application. Because where a lot of the spam was coming from in Solana was there'd basically be these NFT drops that everyone would try to run bots and try to go snipe. And so there'd be like this incredible amount of congestion around certain programs at certain points in time, and then it would, affect the vast majority of people. It would have nothing to do with like whatever NFT drop, and then it would affect the network for everyone, right? But with local fee markets, what's pretty cool is if we're all trying to fight over these NFTs on this one program, then we'll pay premium. But then it's not going to affect the person over there who's just trying to send a payment, right? And that person is still going to experience the cost and speed kind of performance they would expect. So like I think something like that's pretty neat, quite innovative. That you can have like single main chain and then also still like within that have differentiation and have sort of like localized experiences like that. So I thought that was pretty cool as well.
Awesome. All right. So for the next question, I think this is also a deeper dive into one of the questions that we have already answered. So the Solana, I think decentralization is a huge characteristic. But how decentralized, or maybe if you can go deeper into what the Nakamoto coefficient is, and regarding the nodes and validators, the amount of nodes and validators on Solana.
Yeah. So the Nakamoto coefficient, actually we kind of coined that one when we were still at Earn. I think that was like the original blog post on that is through Earn. But it was, how to quantify decentralization. And in a proof of stake network, if you control over 33% of the stake, then you can maliciously attack the network, right? So that's kind of the economic security threshold of a network. And so what a lot of people in crypto talk about is what is the Nakamoto coefficient, i.e. the number of nodes that together have 33% or more of the network staked to that collective number of nodes. And so in Solana, if there's over 2,000 nodes, obviously not each of those has the same amount of stake on it. Some nodes have a lot of stake, and then others might only have 30,000 sold or something like that, and others will have millions of sold, right? So what you don't want is, you don't want to have like two nodes together that could very easily collude and then start to double spend and do malicious things on the network. And so, typically, if you have a higher Nakamoto coefficient, meaning a higher number of nodes that collectively are 33% of stake, then you are more sort of resilient to malicious actor attacks. So that's been like an important metric for us. When I started with Solana, we were in the high teens, and that's now 30. There's like live dashboards, Solana Beach, for example, that will show you all the gory detail on all of the nodes and who runs them and all the rest of it. So that's been pretty important. And also, because hardware and network performance is so important to Solana, just the way it's architected, right? This is also something that we've put a lot of time, energy, and attention on. It's worth pointing out that we do not control the network at all. And so like something like 90% of validators are run by independent entities. And what that means by independent entities is that's like, an independent person or company that's running like a single validator, meaning a single server. So this isn't something where like Foundation doesn't even run any validators. So it's not something where like the Foundation is running 1,900 validators in one data center or something like that. But it's more that's been like really important just to make sure that overall health of the network, right? So make sure we're continuing to innovate on technical roadmap, continuing to innovate network upgrades, continuing to innovate in terms of scaling TPS through software and hardware means, and also making sure that the network is doing what we can to make sure the network is going to be robust to whatever may come. So
yeah, I think we're in crypto, right? So I think a lot of people are very very aware of how decentralized a network is, and like you mentioned, whether it's the nodes, the Nakamoto coefficient. So these are some of the metrics for our audience, for our viewers. If you want to evaluate the excuse me, the decentralization of how this.
Oops. Larry, where did you go? Uh-oh, is Larry going to rejoin us?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I think Larry will be joining us real quick. That's why I'm sitting backstage.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, I think we can. Oh, Larry's back.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Larry.
Sorry.
You're back.
My internet ambushed me.
It's okay. We're only gone for 10 seconds.
Network halt.
Thank you.
Network halted.
See, the importance of a good network just right there. And thanks, Johan, for coming up. But yeah, Johan, if you want to stay. But we were talking about so on the topic of decentralization, Nakamoto coefficient, the amount of nodes percentages on a single data center or in different data centers. So preventing that, if one data center fails, there's going to be a network outage. So yeah, those are some of the metrics that we can look at. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to like in cryptos, sometimes these kind of like network, let's call it like shutdowns, they actually do kind of happen. Like in, when was it when China really cracked down on Bitcoin miners, for example? And so as a result, Bitcoin mining, China used to be like #1 place where Bitcoin is being mined. And I remember like for years, the Bitcoin community was thinking about global decentralization, thinking all sorts of different ways to make sure like, not vulnerable to a certain port being cut off and satellites, right? And all sorts of types of things. And actually, it was important.
Yeah, so decentralization has always been a topic from the start. Even Bitcoin has been a center of controversy for some time. So I think this is also a very important metric when we are looking at a crypto project or especially a layer 1 blockchain. So leading us to the next question. So there has been complaints. So this is there has been complaints of a chronic network outages. I'm sure a lot of viewers are aware that Solana has been prone to network outages in the past. And so are there new features launching that will be able to address this issue?
Yeah, so there were 3 big features that folks worked on last year, and actually were all deployed and live on mainnet in 2022. So we talked about one of them, local fee markets. That's the most recent one to go live. I think that's a pretty big deal. There are 2 others that preceded that. One is implementing Quick protocol, right? It's a sort of more, it's like more advanced transport protocol that allows more efficient and also sort of more efficient communication between different nodes. And so it was previously using something called UDP, swapped that to Quick, which has more controls around it and more bandwidth and various things like that. And so that was like a pretty big deal, right? Because that's like, ripping out and replacing the transport protocol that allows RPC nodes and validators to communicate with one another, which is like really core to how the network functions. So, and we call that a network upgrade, but like or like a feature, but it's like it's pretty intense to engineer something like that. And so I know people were like, why is this keep on happening? And we're like, we're working on it, okay, and we did, and that works. And then another feature, stake weighted QoS, that was stake weighted voting. And so basically validators that have more percentage of stake, right? Them having more percentage of stake is a signal of sort of, I suppose, being more like trusted by the network or something. And so basically they would have more sort of, have more weight when they're kind of voting on transactions, and that would help alleviate congestion as well. So local fee markets that we talked about. There's also a couple that are in the works. One is to increase transaction size. And then another one is to decrease the size of vote transactions. And so like, something that people have commented on more than once is that vote transactions are included in consensus. I think that's been something that's been debated more than once. So part of the idea is like decrease the size of the vote transactions, and so there's sort of more capacity, if you will, available for like transactions. So
okay,
yeah. So I think it's also worth noting that we've had 6 months of 100% uptime. And if you look at uptime, it's all equal to or better than historical averages, meaning things like the average time to produce a block, the average compute units per block, average CPS, max CPS. And so, performance also recently, like maybe some people participated in Bonk, right? The dog coin, we all love dog coins, who doesn't? That was airdropped to the community. after the holidays. And so during that entire time where there's like a huge amount of transaction volume, the network performed really well. Yeah. So it's been it was definitely a challenge. There are a number of outages, as I'm sure everyone was aware last year. But also part of it was like Solana was a little bit a victim of its own success, right? Because launched in 2020, like no one paid attention for some period of time. And then CLOBs, basically, or central limit order books, the ability to do fully on-chain central limit order books, started to come out the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. And suddenly, that was so unique that Solana attracted so many sort of HFT-oriented like traders that were all net new to crypto and kind of came into Web3 through Solana. Which was really exciting for Solana because like really, talented developers and all the rest of it. But then that also meant that like the interest and the demand, and then add on to that NFTs and everything, really created this massive demand for block space that exceeds what like a normal engineering roadmap can scale to, right? And so it actually reminded me of like the Ethereum network back in 2016. I remember, I think it might have been during like, an ETH conference or something like that, ETH Global or something like that, when ETH was unavailable for even a week or two. And I remember like there was developers, and no one remembers because it was 2016, it was much smaller community and all that type of stuff. But I remember at like one of these conferences, actually a lot of the core developers were like sitting there in the conference rooms, like getting the network back. And that's one of the things that has happened in crypto. And yeah, and it's not even specific just to crypto. I mean, if you go way back, like there was Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, right? Melting servers, the amount of demand. So it's something that, it was a challenge last year, but I think has been pretty smooth recently.
Yeah, Twitter also had an outage, I think, a few months back. So
yeah,
I think one morning for me and one night for the West Coast in the States, we couldn't log in. So I guess like this is definitely the development through the development cycle of a technology. There's definitely going to be ups and downs, and I think like you said, right. It's good that the Solana is getting pressure test where where actually real use cases are coming in. I guess this is a good problem to have, other than having no people to pressure test the chains. So like you said, I think recently the Bonk one really brought liveliness into the Solana community, and that really shows that the new network updates has proven to be a more stable and stern for the Solana network. All right, so I think this next question is also one of my favorite questions. So Elizabeth has asked, I think maybe you can generally give an introduction to those that don't know about the Solana smartphone, and then touch on some advantages, and then address the question on whether make it to the top one. But I'm not sure in terms of what ranking, but just give a brief introduction to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way most people consume the internet is like by any measure is through mobile, right? But the way we use mobile phones today, there are things about both the hardware and the software of it that is not very friendly towards crypto. Hardware side, obviously there's security, right? Because in crypto, no security, you can lose everything. It's pretty bad. And so that's one aspect of it, to have a secure enclave, which can help secure private keys and all that type of stuff. So that's one part of it. But then also on the software side, if you use the Apple App Store, 30% goes to the house, goes to Apple Inc. Right? That's why they're a $1 trillion company. And so and if you want to avoid that, because like that can't work in a crypto experience, right? If something is happening entirely on chain, like and Apple's supposed to take 30%, like I mean, how does that work? It's like it's not feasible, and so that's a challenge. And so usually the way people get out of that is go from a native app experience, they pop out to a browser, and that's definitely awkward, as we've all experienced. So that's one thing where like the mobile world as we know it today is actually not really super compatible with crypto. Another is like the terms and services are obviously not crypto friendly. I'm sure we all have a friend that's dealt with that, right? And probably a lot of horror stories around that. And then there's like the censorship resistance part of that related to the terms and service. But there's, you know, as we've been saying in multiple social media settings, there's a team of people behind the curtain, and they either like you or they don't, depending on the day, and depending on who's reporting for work that day. And this is part of the reason why, like, we care a lot about decentralization in all of the ways, right? Not just in terms of network node decentralization, but also, you know, the fact that you can natively deploy applications to open networks. And so, you know, there's the technical aspect of that apps can execute onto decentralized storage. There's, you know, maintaining the permissionless nature of that, so that you don't have some person who you may never be able to reach who's like, no, I don't like that app, violates this term somewhere here, and then, you know, banished, right? So those are some of the reasons why permissionless, decentralized, crypto native hardware and software platforms, I think, are really important. And because Solana, you know, kind of comes back to Solana performance, it's something that actually I think really belongs on, or can even accommodate, right, main chain, whereas in some other networks, that would potentially be something that makes more sense for performance of maybe a roll-up or something like that. So that's why it's definitely a big swing, and it's definitely like big vision, but that's what we're up to. So, and I think it's also worth mentioning the phone is coming in the spring, and you can pre-order on the website, Solana Mobile. So, yep.
So I think, yeah, a lot of people are already using their smartphones as sort of like hard wallets, you know, like storing their seed phrases, you know, for convenience on these phone networks, right? But on these the current phones that are available, and there's, like you said, there's no native hardware for crypto yet that's consumer facing. So I think this is really I think this Solana is the only one in, I think right now with the hardware when the hardware play.
Yeah.
And I think sorry, one of my just one of my own personal question is, so for the Solana smartphone, will other layer ones be able to develop on it?
I think maybe eventually, right? And so there's multiple parts of like the mobile phone things that we've been working on. There's the physical handset, right? It's obviously very tangible. There's also SMS, Solana mobile stack. That's software. And then there's going to be dAppsters, obviously software as well. There's also, you know, one of big contributors to the ecosystem is Backpack. That's non-custodial wallet that, you know, a couple of folks that have been part of the ecosystem for a long time are building. And through that, they've also built new technology called compressed NFTs. And that's pretty cool because then you can, it's a little bit like, you know, kind of like the mini apps that if you've ever used WeChat before, you kind of have like these mini apps, right? And so that's also like an evolution of technical standard implemented in a way that I think, you know, we can all kind of see how that's pretty useful in a mobile context. And so then that starts to get into yeah, you know, like these sort of almost like, you know, mini apps in NFTs in a non-custodial wallet on a crypto first phone. And you can start to see like how this entire stack is being rebuilt to be crypto friendly.
Awesome. So I think with one quick reminder to the live audience. So I was having trouble with my phone, and I realized that you have to click. So I think for some of the audience, the comments aren't loading. So if you join from the main page on the Binance Live, you won't be able to see the comments. But if you go to followers and then click the AMA, you'll be able to see the comments. And remember, so thank you guys for submitting the questions. We have collected some, and please do include your UID in the questions. It'll be much easier for us for the reward distribution. If we were to run into technical difficulties not finding your UID, then unfortunately then you won't be able to get it. So this is a question from the live audience, and congrats Hajpa. Please send your UID But yeah, how is Solana? So I think, like you mentioned, the Solana developer ecosystem has been extraordinary. But then there's also, artists, especially Solana NFT is also a huge sector. So how is Solana supporting these creative artists or these teams and developers to onboard to Solana?
Yeah. So developers, there's a core protocol, and then developers are important for even they build things that support creators and artists, and together build things that users might want to use, right? So for us, it's always been sort of developers. That's kind of like the core of the community. And so with developers, there's a number of things. I think like the very tangible side, there's we've been investing a lot in developer tools, investing in folks that are contributing to public goods and token standards, and really helping like innovate on that very core level. And that's in terms of tools to make you more efficient every day, right? There's a ton of other things we're doing to support the developer community, and a lot of that's going to also start to affect the creator and artist community as well. So I think probably a lot of people are aware of the hacker houses that we've been doing, and so we have thrown these incredible events. I think we did 24 last year. We're doing 9 this year. These incredible sort of 5-day hacker house events in different cities around the world. We did 2 in Singapore last year, right? They've been incredible. And so that's also been a way to build community, right? Have people sort of get a chance to really feel like they're part of the community, part of the culture. And so and then, of course, on top of that, like providing, support in terms of how to build on Solana, right? Helping folks meet one another and meet co-founders. And there's so many like things that happen in that in-person setting. We've also been investing a lot in education, and multiple kind of initiatives on that side, educational resources. Together, we with the community built the Solana cookbook. We continue to invest in developer tooling. And so I think, and then also it's worth mentioning that, traditionally people thought about Solana as you got to know Rust. That is still the predominant way that, people get involved in Solana. But now there's, Anchor framework, and you can even potentially build in Solana using Java. I think maybe you're hearing it here for the first time, but later this year, Move is going to be supported as well.
I might need to emphasize that. So yes, this hasn't been announced yet. So you're hearing it first on Binance Live, but Move. So I mean, recently I think Move is one of the most hottest or most popular topic in terms of programming languages in the recent months or even for the past year. So having this support of this programming language would definitely be very attractive to a lot of different teams as well.
Yeah.
So very, very exciting news. I'm definitely gonna clip that and then put it on, put it somewhere for the views.
Yeah.
All right. So next question is what? Okay. So okay. So this is also a question from the community. Chilo, thanks for the question. Please send your UID to the comments. How can you maintain the speed of Solana? So I think this goes back to looping back to one of our first few topics on Solana solving the blockchain trilemma. And how does Solana maintain the speed without sacrificing the security, I guess?
Yeah. Well, on the security side, talked about the Nakamoto coefficient earlier, and also just the size of the validator set. So we've thought quite a bit about that, and really sort of pushed the community to help maintain economic security on that front. And then on the speed as well, just kind of the way Solana has been architected. That it's been architected to sort of really harness speed improvements at the edge of hardware innovation. And so there's kind of like the baseline level of that, which you can observe today when you use it, around 3,000 TPS. And there's just, as we kind of demonstrated through a number of the network upgrades that were made over the last year or so, there are a number of ways to to optimize the network, to cut down on spam, priority transactions, and things like that that don't come at the core cost of security. So, I think that honestly, I think Solana has found just a different optimization point, right? Where trade-offs exist, but they don't always have the same cost.
And of course, like Solana implements a sort of modified or improved version of proof of stake, or like a new a modified version of the normal different from the other consensus mechanisms. So normally, like Bitcoin uses proof of work. Most of the EVM compatible chains use proof of stake. Solana bases on proof of stake and has a modified proof of history, where I think it adds timestamps onto the blockchain so that you can process intuitively process transactions faster. And then parallelization. So I actually learned this from the recently launched Solana Learn and Earn course on Binance Academy. So this is for so this is for new users to. So I think I didn't introduce myself as well. So I'm Larry from Simple Earn. And if you are new users to Simple Earn, you can go on to the Binance Academy. And there are courses for different projects, Solana. So these are limited courses where you can earn while learning. I think this is one of the few places. Crypto is one of the few places where you get to actually earn money and while learning innovative new concepts. So if you are a new user to Earn, to Binance Earn, the product, you can go Google Binance Academy and then go look for the course. It's very, very informative. It really gets you up to speed on what Solana at the core really is, and it has a good explanation on the technical advantages of what Solana has, including so I'll go through some of these at the end in the PPT, one of the PPT I've also prepared, but like the concepts of proof of history, parallelization, and improved Byzantine fault tolerance protocol. So yeah, I think noticing that we are already 1 hour and 5 minutes past an hour, let's choose 2 to 3 more questions. So okay, let me see. Recently, okay. So this one, Mike Artist 929. Thank you for the question. So everyone heard about Solana's partnerships. I think we didn't. I think this is also a very, very exciting sector. So the partnerships for Solana with Google. Could you tell us a bit more about like partnerships in general? Solana's partnerships in the past year, and then so the question is how practically will be blockchain technology should be used through these partnerships.
Yeah, totally. So with Google, Google Cloud is running a block producing validator on Solana. So yeah, the validator said that's going to be 1 out of the 2,000. But obviously, pretty cool. They're going to be they have something called Blockchain Node Engine, and they're bringing that to Solana this year. So what this means is Google Cloud obviously has like a ton of really important developer tools that just help developers kind of abstract away some of the backend when they're building, and then focus on building the app, right? That is so Google helps people do that, and obviously Google Cloud is pretty well adopted around the world, and so yeah, that's like per the earlier question, what are we doing to support developers? That's one of the things that just help people get started faster, right? And really focus on the innovation and really focused on building cool dApps, and rather than doing a lot of work on backend. So that's what we're doing with Google.
Awesome.
And also shout out to the guys at Google. They're really forward thinking, very strategic, and really like the people who lead that team are really Web3 native in ways that not everyone expected. So they're great.
I hear you.
Because usually like Google, you're like, oh, are you trying to sell me servers, right? As a salesperson. But no, I mean, they really mean it. And I love that.
Yeah. I think it's really exciting.
That Google knows about it.
I told them before, so yeah.
Yeah. So it's great to onboard traditional the Web2 tech giants as well. I think we are seeing a lot of partnerships happening in the crypto space even during this market. So I think this is, in general, this is quite good for the crypto space as a whole. So next question from Tasvia15. This is also a question from the live comments. Thanks for the question. So what are the goals that Solana will be, or the roadmaps that Solana will be developing this year? I think we heard first here that Solana is implementing supporting Move other than just Rust. So that's one quick answer, but Lily, take
Yeah, I mean, number one, it comes back to developers again. So let's see, there's recently the Electric Capital report that, for many years running now has kind of been like the report of note in terms of which L1s are seeing a lot of developer activity, which is a proxy for sort of long-term health. And so let's see, using data through January, so that includes the couple of months after the FTX collapse, which interestingly, no one has asked me about. So, but so the total number of developers on Solana grew the fastest of any blockchain, and over the course of 2022, and up is like something like 83% year on year, and over 10x since 2018. And so now second sort of most developer-rich ecosystem after EVM. So that's always number one goal, to continue to grow that. And then, I work a lot on new markets, meaning, non-US markets. And so that's also a big priority for us. We did a lot of work in India last year, building community there. And then now Vietnam has been a focus, Southeast Asia, clearly. We are coming to Taiwan later this year for Hacker House, is, a major Mandarin speaking market, and the most open one. And then also in Europe, we launched, the community launched Super Team in Germany. So we've also started to really think about basically developer-rich markets. And so that's, Western Europe for sure, Eastern Europe as well. We've got an amazing community in Mexico that's really coming together really on its own. And so we're also doing a Hacker House in Istanbul this weekend. We've got over 1,000 registrations for that 5-day event, which we're really excited about. And so, developer growth is a huge focus for us. I think another one is also doing more to engage creators and artists. And so I think we're gonna do a number of things there, and are pretty excited about, also finding novel ways that we can sort of innovate on some of the core token standards to support really unique use cases. I think that, if we look at the NFT world, for example, for a while, people thought, like the beginning of 2021, people thought, it's not just in Solana, like the entire industry kind of equated NFTs with like real world art that would be sold at Christie's, right? And that was like the whole thing with Beeple and whatever else. And that kind of kicked off this entire storm. And then very quickly got into PFPs. And then very, soon after that, then generative art became a thing, right? So NFTs have gone from application to basically being a primitive that supports, all sorts of different applications. And so what I'm actually really excited to see is not just I have like a piece of art that I traditionally hang on my wall, and now I can create like an NFT of that image that then I can project onto my wall, right? That's like a starting point, sure. And it's not just a JPEG that gates, community access or something like that, although that's also always going to exist and helpful and interesting and everything. But like, what are like entirely sort of new forms of art and creativity, and also ways that we can monetize that you can only do on a blockchain, right? And so I think that's the really interesting point, and that's where general purpose L1s should shine, which is to say, like, here's this new thing that you can create, and on top of that, you can monetize it and get liquidity for it in an inherently sort of decentralized P2P fashion, and you just can't do that anywhere else. So those are the types of things that, for us, always the focus is always on developers, builders, creators. We've likened Solana in the past, and just L1s generally, they're not corporations. They're actually more like cities, meaning that, if you're starting a city, and this has even happened, in recent times in the last couple of decades, is basically you take like a big plot of land and you're like, come build a city with me, right? And it's a little bit like the way we approach L1s actually are as well. Like, here's all this fallow block space back here, and let's go build something together. And so what you really want is you want people who are builders and creators, basically producers, right? Some of those producers are engineers. Some of those people are going to be non-technical, but still like absolutely critical. What you want to do is you want to sort of attract as many of those people together, harness their collective creative energy, and go build things that aren't possible anywhere else. And so, really the way we think about it is like the collective intelligence of the ecosystem, of the community, is the most valuable thing. And that's developers, that's creators, that's artists, that's non-technical builders, and it's, so finding the various ways that we can support those communities, whether it's through very tangible things like educational resources, whether it's through things like developer tooling, whether it's things like facilitating community events through hacker houses. What we're also really focused on is, the fewer of these things that need to be driven through the foundation, actually, the better. And so what we try to do is these things like hacker houses that seem to work really well for the community. What we want to do is we actually want to sort of package them into open source knowledge, right, or know-how that anyone in the community can take and run with, right? And then, ideally, a year from now, it'd be great if even some of the biggest hacker houses in the ecosystem are not done by the foundation, but just done by the community, right? Or the biggest hackathons are run by people who are just part of the community, and do that because it's worthwhile for them. So that's what we're focused on over the course of this year. Although on that point with hackathons, we also have a hackathon launching very soon. I think maybe you might also be hearing it here for the first time. We'll announce all the details on that soon, but stay tuned. And we're going to be having $5 million in prizes in that hackathon. So very shortly, any day now.
I'm gonna have a lot of post editing work for this AMA. But so many spicy new news. But essentially the roadmap for Solana in the coming year, I think once again, move the Solana phone will be launching to the general public, and you guys can pre-order on Solana. And then also the hackathons, where we'll be attracting a lot of touring the world to different cities, and also attracting a lot of different developers. All right, so I think aware of the time, let's address the last question, and then we have the prize quiz at the end. So finally, I've saved this question for last. Bunud Tarshar has asked them. I think the elephant in the room is that a lot of users are concerned whether FTX has had an impact on Solana, and how Solana would be addressing this.
Yeah, totally. I actually pinned on my Twitter profile, like, we've gotten this question so many times, what is the relationship between FTX and Solana? Covers every single gory detail about every financial relationship that FTX, broadly defined, and Solana have ever had. So if you want all the gory details, it's on there: dates, numbers, decimal points, all the rest of it. Look, like, I think the relationship with FTX, so that predated when I got involved, but from what I understand, FTX themselves evolved over time, right? And so when FTX and Solana first started to kind of work together in 2020, FTX was focused on non-custodial stuff, right? They built Serum, which was actually like really impactful, demonstrating how Solana can do central limit order books like no one else can. And they also built like Solid, a browser extension wallet. They were kind of like that infrastructure that was centralized exchange to a little bit of on-off ramp type thing. They provided a lot of infrastructure that actually really ultimately supported non-custodial stuff in Solana. And then, slowly over time, there was a little bit of divergence strategically over, the importance of non-custodial. And, L1's Web3 natives really care about self-custody, and that was a bit of a divergence that obviously was not talked about publicly, because that's, like, talk about your partners that way. But that was getting a little bit awkward, honestly. And so in 2020, it was like FTX was very net positive to Solana. 2021, honestly, was probably net neutral. In 2022, even before the FTX collapse, was cordial, friendly, supportive, but not but not really sure how sort of it rated sort of net in 2022 versus previous years. And so so it's been a long time that Solana has really been been doing its own thing, right? And FTX is one of many participants. In the entire time I've been involved, right, I've always thought FTX was very friendly and supportive, but that was basically it. So all of the things that you've seen Solana accomplish over the last 2 or 3 years, like that's been Solana and the community, right? That's been the community that really did that. And FTX, I think, is a member of that community, certainly made contributions, but it was in no way sort of, I remember in November, I was like, Solana's dead, right? It's SBF chain, FTX chain. I mean, we've heard it all. And that was never true. So I'm glad that, finally we have that to be definitively sort of incontrovertibly sort of proven. So yeah, I think it's fair to conclude that Solana is recovering from the FTX collapse, has recovered from the FTX collapse. And what's been really amazing to see in the community is just that it's obviously very stressful for the community, and people are here to stay because people believe in the tech and believe in the community. And that is, these moments like in crypto, they kind of separate, I feel like, the mercenaries from the missionaries, and you really see who's like, the builders and here for the long term for the right reasons, and folks who are like a little bit more the tourists. And so, I think we've come out of this really intact, and people kind of taking the pain together and are here to support one another. And so, yeah, so what you do see is even in like the Electric Capital report, taking into account data from November, December, and January, community is going strong. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do. There always is, but I'm optimistic about it.
And I think the team's mantra is also eating glass, right? So like even at the start where the team was so small, with no funding or traction from the markets, Solana has been able to deliver. So I think that was from Masari's report. I forgot that quote.
Yeah, eating glass. Our head of dev ecosystem, Chase, he's now come with a new moniker of surfing glass.
Surfing glass.
Surfing glass. Yeah. Also back to Solana,
because on Solana beach.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, that's what it is, and that's like the core group of people who've been like roadkilled once or twice and are still here and still because they're in it for the long-term reasons. So I think we've seen that happen, and it's never easy when it happens. But that's also what really makes community, right? I think that there are certain cultures and communities that can always just sort of get through something, and I think Solana is one of those. So it's been exciting, but not going anywhere and just growing.
All right, I think so. Thanks so much, Lily. I think we addressed a lot of pressing questions from the community, and I myself also got a lot more educated on Solana. So I do have, I guess a lot of people are waiting for the prize quiz at the end. So we are changing the format. We won't be doing it live. I will be leaving a QR code at the end of the AMA, so be sure to stay tuned. So I have a quick slide to go through some of the key points that we went through today. So these are actually snippets from the Learn and Learn course that I mentioned. And Lily, feel free to jump in. So this is something also for me to sort of absorb the knowledge for today. But yeah, so thanks so much, Lily. It's been an amazing AMA. But I'll go through the key points. Feel free to jump in whenever if you think of something that you want to add or correct me if I'm wrong. But so yeah, so and do pay attention, because these snippets are highly correlated with the questions I've chosen in the prize quiz. So you only get one chance to answer, to submit the questions and to submit the survey. And if you get it wrong, then that's it. So be very careful choosing the questions. I will leave the survey on for 24 hours. so you can have time to research more about the project. But all right, so go through some of the quick concepts. So about Solana, founded in 2017 by Solana Labs, and the founder, one of the co-founders is Anatoly Yakovenko. So I think Solana, as we have emphasized at the start, focuses on a general purpose blockchain, layer 1 blockchain that focuses on fast transactions and high throughput. And how does it achieve this? Through mainly, so there are a lot of different points here. So I just took 3. One is a modified version of proof of stake, which is proof of history. It's still using proof of stake, but also the proof of history is a method of, as you can see here, verifying time without need for a conventional timestamp, and also parallelization, where it can process more than one transaction at any given time, whereas many blockchains, they are only it's like a queue, right? They have to process one by one. And then Byzantine fault tolerance is a consensus mechanism for distributed systems such as blockchains. So the Solana has a optimized or proof of history optimized version of the practical Byzantine fault tolerance. So this I actually got a screenshot from the Solana.com page. So like I mentioned at the start, all of these figures are in real time. You can go to Solana.com to see how fast the transactions are running, how many transactions. So you can see here it's already at 138 billion. Is that correct? 138 billion. So during the AMA, it's also been so every second you'll see that. Normally you'll see the numbers clicking here, because the thousands, the numbers below thousands are changing too fast. So you can go here. So how fast is Solana? TPS is around 3,000 to 4,000 transactions per second. You can go onto the website to see for yourself. And it's very, very energy efficient. And so when I say fast transaction and low fees, the second one, low fees, how low? It's 0.0000025 on average per transaction. So do take note on these figures. They might or might not be in the quiz. So what about the Solana? So we've touched on the Solana blockchain. So there is, of course, like many layer 1s, there's a native token, SOL. And it's a native utility token, which the network burns as part of its deflationary. I think very similar to the EIP, EIP 1559. And then, so how can you use SOL? And do take note here. SOL is used for paying for transaction fees on Solana. You can actually stake SOL because Solana is a proof of stake consensus blockchain to earn rewards. And if you have Solana on Binance, you can also go to Simple Earn to stake your Solana, or sort of subscribe your Solana to whether it's flexible or locked products. I'll go into deeper later on. And then you can also pay, if you are a developer, you can pay, if you're building applications, you have to pay Solana to interact to interact with the smart contracts. And one of the recent developments or roadmaps, upcoming roadmaps, is Saga. So I don't think we mentioned the name, but the Solana mobile is called Saga, and it's going to be reviewed. It was reviewed last year in June, but it was only shipped to developers, and this year it's going to be available for the general public. And Solana will be launching a native Solana dApp store that would be crypto focused. Be a crypto focused phone. And then also Jump Crypto is launching an independent validator client. So this improves the Solana's decentralization and has the potential to scale Solana to up to 1.2 million TPS. And once again, for comparison or for some background, Bitcoin's currently processing at around 7 TPS and Ethereum at around 15. And for even Visa is around 30,000 TPS. So this would be somewhat of a game changer to the blockchain space. So quick plug here. So we are, me and Johan are both on the Simple Earn team. So what is Simple Earn? It's an easy, it's a Binance product where you can navigate to Binance Earn. It's an easy way for you to earn coins on your idle tokens, especially for POS projects like Solana. You'll be able to stake your Solana to earn the yields we sort of we stake the projects on your behalf. You can read more about the products in our FAQ and our terms of service. And like I mentioned, in the middle of the AMA, right now it's currently live. This promotion is currently live. We do have a learn and earn course. So if you are a new user, note that you have to be a new user to learn to Simple Earn. So if you haven't used Simple Earn before, you can go on to the Binance Academy, and you'll find these courses. You can take all of these courses, so Solana, Hook, HFT, and you'll be able to earn these rewards across the duration. So you get to learn about the projects. I think it's very, very well written, very, very informative. And you also get to get rewards from the project. So just Google Binance, learn and earn, and you'll find the landing page. So just in case you go onto a phishing website, it looks like this. So earn free crypto through learning. All right, so I think that's a wrap. So at the end, feel free to screenshot here. I'll leave this open for 24 hours. Just so people from different time zones can have some time to have a chance to complete the quiz. Otherwise, we're not very friendly to people from the West Coast or East Coast in the North American time zones. But yeah, so I have given a lot of hints in my presentation. The questions or the quiz is quite challenging. Be sure to double check them before you send, because you only get one chance. And if you get all the questions correct, you'll be able to split a prize pool of $1,000 worth of SOL with all of the people who got all the questions correct. So good luck. And yeah, Lily, do you have anything else? Was that a good was that a good
yeah,
summary?
I was about to say, Larry, well done.
Thank you.
Really well done.
Gratitude to the Binance Academy. Really good course. So you guys can go check it out. Yeah. So Lily, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks so much, guys. It's been a long, really fun session, and thanks for doing this. And I thought it seems like we got a pretty good audience today, so that's awesome.
Yes, we currently at, I think if my isn't lagging, 67.5 thousand views, live views. So it's incredible. Thank you guys. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to our audience so much for tuning into today's session. This is also available on YouTube, and it will also be available for replay on Binance Live. So if you missed some of the sections, feel free to scroll around. And yeah, stay tuned to Binance Live. We do have a lot more Binance AMAs coming up. So tomorrow we have HFT, and then in the coming weeks we also have a lot of exciting projects like Algorand, Tomo Chain, and EOS Network. So you can follow us on the channel below if you can see the button, and also follow us on Binance Twitter, the Twitter account, and follow Lily on Lily's Twitter, which is CA Lily Liu. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's me.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks so much,
Amazing.
Lily. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.